Okay, confirming that we have quorum. So those are the only two. I see Chief Williams on there.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, we're good.
Great. All right, go ahead and call the meeting to order. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. We'll dive right into the agenda. I have some commitments that will require me to be virtual beginning around 11:35. Given how we are going to discuss topics today and who will take point on those, I'm going to shift the agenda around a little bit, start with City of Spokane, and then in anticipation that we'll be further through that discussion near the time I need to leave, and then Scott will be taking point on budget to go through that with Brad's supervision. Thank you. So City of Spokane, been ongoing discussions occurring about the N1 approaching deadline, as well as the March 23rd go live date. Those have been attended with county commissioner representation. Both Commissioners French and Jordan have been there. Lori's had some presences at those meetings. Scott has sat in as well on a couple. The city has had a unified approach between the administration, the mayor, her staff, including Maggie, Alex, as well as council, city council representation, with council members Wilkerson and Cathcart present. And so I think the good news is we have unity in position from City of Spokane on potential solutions, which has been the primary intent of those meetings, is to try to keep it solution oriented and focus on decisions that we can make in that room. Most recently, the two topics have revolved around services and finances, which is really consistent with the course of this discussion. Prior it was governance, service, finances, and getting out with the decision to go to their own primary PSAP, we're really focused on services and finances. And so today I thought I would start with the concepts, which I think the concepts are few and the methods are many. And as we get into maybe some of the potential methods to become solution oriented in the future, we may move some of that. Anything that could be related to potential litigation in the future, we may move that into executive session, but I will try to cover as much ground in open session as possible, just to ensure transparency and good understanding for the entire board, as well as other interested parties on current circumstances. So with that, I will begin with service and the solutions being discussed. So one of the challenges right now is the approaching timeline of January 1. I think everybody's aware that as of right now, there's no structured agreement for continuous services from SREC for the City of Spokane beyond the January morning, John. Morning. Good to see you. No structured agreement for services beyond January 1, given current circumstances, other than what we see as the jurisdictional obligation as the primary PSAP, SREC, for the county would continue to do call receiving past that point. And both sides concur that the city will not be ready to take their own calls and function as the primary PSAP come January 1st. So one of the things that would need to be resolved is some sort of structured agreement for services beyond that. But as of today, the obligation for SREC is the call receiving with the potential transfer to the secondary PSAP for both law, which is happening today, but as well as fire come January 1. So there's been a lot of discussion about the potential options around that. this board is aware that we've previously discussed the options related to the current CAD system and the ability to provide auto aid if an interface was built between SRECs, Hexagon, and the current Infor New World, to allow for the continuation of auto aid post March 23rd, post go live date. So that's one option. I will tell you that's not the preferred option for City of Spokane. They are very interested, their primary option is getting built into the SREC, Hexagon, CAD system as their number one. So we've talked through the limitations around that work occurring prior to our go live date. And the discussions centered around SREC has a strong desire to do that. Obviously that we want auto aid, mutual aid for both sides. It's really important to us. The question then becomes the potential other negative public safety impacts related to a delay of the go live date if that could not be achieved by March 23rd. Current best information available from IT department is that trying to complete that work prior to March 23rd, meaning built into SREC's Hexagon CAD system, is that would not be successful. Dusty, I think, had a very good description that I would like to share, and he can step in and correct me if needed, but it's not as simple as just a body of work that took X amount of time and you just replicate that body of work under X amount of time. CAD is more like building a home. And maybe this part of it was the wiring, right? But the foundation's poured, the house has been framed, the roof is on, the wiring has been completed, then they sheetrock, put the cabinets in, painted, and put down the floor. To go back and do the wiring, right, is not as simple as the amount of time it took just to do the wiring when all the studs were exposed and there was no insulation and sheetrock. That's the best way I can get my mind around what has occurred. And so it's not a lack of willingness by the IT department or SREC to do that work. That work needs to happen at some point in the future. So there is a discussion occurring or scheduled to occur over the next 1 to 2 weeks to ask if there's any way that could be done prior to the go live date to mitigate the potential, and again, unintended, but very real consequences of a delay of the scheduled go live date for CAT, which, as a refresher, would have impacts related to move-in date of new facility, would have impacts related to the new 911 phone system and other public safety related impacts that would also probably increase costs for both agencies on top of the related public safety impacts. I think we've got common understanding from both sides around that there are trade-offs under both scenarios. So I've also emphasized the focus on the plan that the IT believes would have a high probability of success, which would be the maintenance of current CAD system for the city of Spokane, build the interface, get it done prior to the go live date. There's obviously concerns around staying on that system with licensing. I think that can be resolved. There's very real costs associated with hardware that's at end of life that IT would recommend should be replaced. But of the options available, we have communicated that has the highest probability of success. But we are willing to certainly pursue, genuine discussions around could this work be done to build them into the CAD system prior to the go live date without negative impacts. Now, that would also create the ability for continued dispatch services for Spokane Fire Department. That creates another potential discussion point for this board around what I would describe as the status quo and the maintaining of status quo and everything that would go with that. So as it relates to service, that's the current discussion. So a bit of a question mark around the go live date. Could work be done to get city into current SREC licensing. And then the ambiguity around, well, if that could be accomplished, what does that mean for SREC's ability to do the work? What's the impact of that work? We're gonna talk budget later today. How do we structure a budget based on the unknown possibility of doing that work? How do we right size the agency based on the unknown possibility of doing that work? And what decisions have already been made that may have set the course and further narrowed the options available, such as the previous July decision point of city not going to the SREC hexagon licensing that had real impact. Time has passed, our options have narrowed as it relates to the go live date and getting that work accomplished. As we set the budget, right, as we set staffing and we set other programs, it narrows options into the future. So time is of the essence. I think both parties are committed to meeting on a frequent timeline to try and resolve this. But we're really at November right now, and Jan 1's gonna be here very quickly. There's no current structured agreement beyond Jan 1, and March 23rd will shortly follow thereafter. So that's a lot of information around service with a focus on the ability to provide service related to being built into hexagon. And the desire, really, the intent that we're receiving in that discussion is that that could be for an extended period of time under what I would describe as a status quo. At that point, I'll pause and see if there's questions.
So I guess the question I have is if we were to, cause any delays to make sure we get them integrated before we go live for city fire, as I understand it, wouldn't it be reasonable to make sure that the city, any increased costs would be passed on to the city of Spokane?
Well, and that's part of the discussion right now. And I'll get into finances next, but there's certainly this tie-in, and in the spirit of being solution oriented, city has a cash flow problem. They all also want to simultaneously receive funding under apportionment, right? So how, I'm trying to keep solution oriented, but how do we incur additional costs and then allow apportionment to occur for the city of Spokane to get cash flow going for them, and then ask the other member agencies to bear those costs. So trying to be creative, thought about, okay, is there some, interest only payment right now with an agreement to pay costs in the future? The other things we have evaluated is, for both sides, the potential exposure related to if this wasn't solved via an ILA, there's the potential for retroactivity. I think for both sides, and I think both sides agree that could be retroactivity for revenues, with also the potential for retroactivity for services rendered.
Right.
And I probably won't go deeper than that outside of executive session, but trying to just calculate, and Jeff's not, just trying to calculate that what would be the benefit, right? Like quantifiable benefit, given not only the service impacts, but the related financial impact of doing those things. And the further we get downstream with decisions, or a lack of decision can become a decision, even if it's not intentional, it gets harder to unwind, and then the financial costs increase. Maybe.
Yeah, I just wanted to address the sheriff's point, which is that we would be very open to discussing how to take on the costs for the incorporation of SFD in Hexagon.
So that there's a willingness there. And
Other than the math, which is not simple.
yeah, and I'm still trying to be solution oriented and figure out how the math would come out. And I look at just the realities of like the matrix report. And again, that's a city document. And so for them to look at the numbers, but right, if we can't afford the costs under regionalization, how would we ever afford the costs of becoming a primary? But again, that's for them to determine at some point. So how would we achieve cash flow? And then how we solve this to achieve, the city's needs while making sure there's not some sort of disparity.
Yeah, just in terms of that discrete sort of challenge, though, I just want to, I think we made clear in the meeting this week, and just want to reiterate it for the sheriff's benefit that my takeaway was that we would reach out to Hexagon to sort of learn more about what that would look like and what it would cost, and based on those cost estimates, figure out how to ensure that the city's built in, but we're not adding additional financial burden on the organization.
Any other questions on service and Hexagon? So, yeah.
Well, I have a question, because I mean, so what does that mean? What I have to ask Maggie, what does that mean then? That you just sounded like you said to add you guys to it at no cost.
No, I said the opposite. That my takeaway from the meeting is that we would see if we can schedule a meeting with Hexagon to explore this potential solution of adding us in to Hexagon, adding SFD into Hexagon, which would achieve two things: one, auto aid, and two, the ability of SREC to dispatch for SFD under a contract. And that based on that conversation, we'd have a better understanding of what the financial impacts of that are, and that the city, that would be a part of the conversation, is how can the city take on the cost for building us into Hexagon. Tom, Chief Williams, am I missing anything? Chief was also at that meeting.
Nope. Yeah, you're right on.
So once you find out what that cost is, then we're going to know whether you guys are going to get in or not.
I think part of it is also discussing with Hexagon if it's possible and what that does to the go live date for SREC, if anything. So there were several pieces to that conversation, both technical.
So my question would be, when is that conversation going to happen? We're literally 2 months away.
I would turn things back over to Chief Rohrbach on that front.
That's not a Chief Rohrbach issue. That's a city of Spokane issue.
No, he was in the meeting, and it was my understanding Dusty was going to reach out to Hexagon to coordinate that joint meeting.
Yeah,
I'm happy to do it.
And Maggie is correct on that. So that was deferred to Dusty to run point first rec from the IT side to schedule a meeting to see again. And as Maggie stated, she's also accurate with there's several layers to this discussion. Number one being, is it possible, right? And so that's where we're going to start in an effort to be solution oriented. Is it possible? And then number two, okay, to Maggie's point as well. Okay, the finances of that, what's the impact? And city has been willing to do that. I think the math, but I'm still trying to figure out how it would add up. Okay, hypothetically, it's possible. Hypothetically, city's willing to pay, as stated, for the impacts of that. The third piece for me would be, okay, this now makes it possible for SREC to continue services beyond March. What's the financial impact of that? And today's discussion is not about solving that, but in my mind, I ask, okay, if there's cash flow issues related to apportionment, how we solve that? And I think I'll save some of those details probably for executive session, but you're both on the right thought process. It's just, for me, it's a hierarchical decision-making pattern where we have to answer if this is possible, then this, but if that's not possible, we stop. And really the March 23rd date continues to be what I think a barrier to making that possible, given the current best information available related to completing that project before the scheduled go live date without other negative impacts to public safety.
But Cody, that only matters if there's a contract signed to get them to March 23rd. So before we put the cart before the horse, I have 145,000 taxpayers and 5 commissioners that need to know. We're finalizing our budget, and this has gone on way too long as is. I need a decision yesterday. I can't keep waiting and putting this off to the end of the year to find out how much burden we have to take on or not take on. There's two aspects that need to be covered. That's number one. And before I let you answer that, I'm going to jump into number two. And the second one was, again, another thing that was brought up by Maggie. It was her first point, which was auto aid. I can't stress enough, auto aid has nothing to do with dispatch. Auto aid being used with dispatch is a bonus. But auto aid was here before dispatch was here. Yes, without us being on the same CAD or having an API that connects us, it will cause a delay. The potential will be a delay. But just because we're not on the same CAD does not mean that there's no auto aid. And I feel like there's a little bit of fear mongering going on there, but there's certainly bad information going on. And I want to clear that up right here and right now. If auto aid goes away, it's because I choose for the department, my department, Spokane Valley Fire Department, and I say we're not going to provide auto aid to anyone else in the county. That's it. Or vice versa. District 3 says we're not going to do auto aid with you guys anymore. That's how auto aid ends. It doesn't end because we're on two different CAD systems. So we need to stop passing on that information because that is not accurate at all. Auto aid is still going to be there. It's going to be delayed. It's basically going to be like being mutual aid is what's going to happen. And that's all I had to say on that. I just wanted to clear that up.
No, I appreciate that, Chief, and I won't say I disagree with you at all. And so to try and go back, you made two important points there. One, related to the budget and financials. The executive committees had the exact same discussion. We agree with you 100%. And you guys probably saw some surprises if you took a look at the new proposed budget, but it's in an effort to create certainty around current circumstances. And so I think a lot of that will be answered by Scott today when we go through it. And I think you'll see we have structured based on, as of today, that city is not part of our operation going forward, not because we're trying to be difficult to city, but because of the exact points that you made. We have to make decisions for SREC certainty in the agencies we are now charged with being responsible for based on what we know today. And so you're going to see some budget adjustments in there and, really scrutinizing what we're doing based on city being out. And it's not that, we're closed off to respond, possibilities for what could happen in the future, but it's given the potential negative impacts around uncertainty for our member agencies and not knowing, we have to move forward in that respect. And then as it relates to auto aid, you are also correct that it first and foremost represents a willingness of the agencies to provide that. I think Gina's hand was up next, so go ahead, Gina.
No, go ahead, Maggie. If you have more to this conversation, I have a little different question.
Okay, I just wanted to, I don't disagree, Chief Soto, but with the mutual aid versus auto aid distinction you're making, but that is a distinction. And if we can get to a point where we're able to build the city in, if the city can take on the cost of building us into SREC's hexagon system, not only does that address the immediate concerns around dispatching for SFD, but it also would create the ability or facilitate that auto aid to resume and eliminate that delay that you were referencing. So I think it has a lot of potential for a lot of different reasons, and am eager to have that conversation to figure out if it is a viable solution.
Gina.
So yeah, I think this is a question for Maggie. I'm a little confused because the city opted out of the hexagon and now wanting to opt in. What happened?
So our chief sent a letter to SREC declining entering into an interlocal agreement with SREC for a shared contract and shared cost sharing of hexagon for a variety of reasons that were listed out in the letter. We were not aware that based on that letter, the city would not be included in the hexagon system. Chief Williams has more subject matter expertise here, so welcome you to jump in, Chief. But from our perspective, as we build out our own CAD system, as we transition to a primary PSAP, we will include the county rigs and stations in it to allow for that auto aid component. And so it came as a surprise to us that even though we wouldn't be a part of the contract, that SREC wouldn't include the city in their build out of CAD.
Thank you for that explanation.
Yeah,
Some of us are tracking a lot more close to this on a more frequent basis, so I just wanted to go back for the entire board's benefit and just for my memory as well. We've already, SREC as our last board meeting, we tried to look for solutions to enable auto aid to be more timely. As Chief Soto mentioned, auto aid still exists regardless of the systems, but to recognize that we have benefits from having systems talk to each other can enhance the timeliness and responsiveness. So our last meeting, we talked about a solution which has been presented, where if SREC took time to invest in building an interface in Hexagon that could go to Infor, and the city could invest in the time to build it into their FireCAD system for an interface for the Hexagon. That was a solution that could be achieved and would enable auto aid to continue and would not have a negative impact on SREC's Hexagon go live date. That we also talked about the ability for hiring up fire dispatchers and training them in time for the occur by March 23rd. And Lori had shared with us her perspective of 2-3 months tops to be able to hire and train people. So I just want to make sure that the board remembered that conversation. That's definitely a solution that could enable auto aid to continue and doesn't negatively impact a real likely delay on a Hexagon go live date, which, as we all know, has impacts on our phone system, our building. I mean, it's a domino effect to a very negative impact to the 20 other jurisdictions. So let's now flip over to Hexagon. Let's say we are able to find a solution where city units could be input into a system that they have said they don't want to participate in. I would have the city critically evaluate if that can be done. What path are you taking to hire your fire dispatchers up and train them prior to the March 23rd? I think that's a reasonable ask. And it doesn't have to be the fire dispatch has to stay with SREC. If it can be implemented in Hexagon, they can hire staff. So I would just offer that as an evaluation that needs to be done in good faith.
So I have a question from the law side. Does this mean that SPD isn't going to be using this new CAD system at all? They're gonna stay with the old one, and they will be the only agency in the county that's not on SREC or not on a CAD system with everybody else? Is that my understanding, or?
They won't be on SREC's Hexagon system. When we have our own PSAP, we'll be on, we're designing it so that the city will have a Hexagon contract.
Right, so, but until that happens, you'll be on the New World CAD system?
That's correct.
anything else on service? That's kind of where we're at currently on service. And again, to kind of bring that full circle. As of right now, I think good faith discussions occurring on how we solve it, but the very real challenges of where we're at with budget, having to set our course for next year and appropriately budget, right size the agency, no structured agreement beyond January 1st, knowing that both sides agree city will not be ready to become a primary PSAP effective January 1, and then also the approaching March 23rd go live date. So I think hopefully everybody at least understands the potential hurdles in front of us now that it is almost November. So if that, I will switch over, just have a few minutes before I have to become virtual, but I'll go into where we're working through on, financial, given the, House bills and the requirements and the language under that. I think given the potential for, litigation, it's probably good to move that discussion. I think we've talked most of the dynamics that can be open public, session thus far, and I'll let Jeff, open on executive session for that with the starting of 15 minutes.
All right. I'll make my announcement. The Spokane Regional Emergency Communications Governing Board will convene into executive session pursuant to RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1I for 15 minutes unless otherwise extended by further announcement, to discuss with legal counsel potential legal action as a result of agency action. It is not anticipated the board will take action upon the conclusion of executive session.
Recording in progress.
Go ahead and log in, Sherelle, just so I don't get lost in the.
And as a reminder, the proxies can stay in for executive session, so the proxies can be a part of the executive session. So keep check referee and Vincy can stay on.
Hopefully aren't getting any feedback off my phone right now, Sherelle.
No.
And we can, Brian Parsons say so.
Got everybody back in, Ms. Sherrill?
No, yeah.
Hi. Thank you, everybody. We're out of executive session and we'll come back into regular session and start with budget discussion. Scott, did you want to start this off today?
I will. I'll frame this and then Lori can help with some of the more finer details. As this board, I'm sure can appreciate, there has been many moving targets. And what we know is we don't know a lot of the unknowns. So we had a conversation with the executive committee yesterday or the day before. And the team has been doing a phenomenal job with Lori and Kim and Dusty and Jenny and Tim, trying to navigate a very complex budgeting process. And I think we all just kind of came to the realization by building in assumptions that are very unknown to us today doesn't create a lot of clarity for our member agencies. So how do we bring this back to a level that says, here's what we know today, here's what we know, and let's build our budget off that so our member agencies can see kind of what a baseline budget should look like for the 20 member agencies. And with that, I'll just go through some of the assumptions. I think this helps provide better clarity, even though I will say that there will likely need to be budget amendments that this board receives and takes actions on as information changes. But right now, this budget is 20 member agencies only, your user fees, and an assumption that the city of Spokane, starting January 1, is not part of this, but they will be presumably continue to be part of the radio system. That's important, and I don't know if we've said this before, and if not, I'll say it. I've made the statements to, I think, the city and to the Board of County Commissioners. The radio system was purchased and installed with taxpayer funds throughout the entire county. Every parcel, every ownership of parcel paid, or I mean, sorry, every individual who purchased goods through sales taxes contribute this, which also includes people who don't necessarily live here. They come from out of town. I think our estimate is about 30% of countywide sales tax are generated from individuals who come outside the city of Spokane. So with that as the baseline, it would be appropriate for every jurisdiction, regardless of whether they're on their own PSAP or not, to have access to that system. Why would we ever ask another agency to build a separate standalone system? But what that does mean is that we SREC have costs as it relates to maintaining the towers, which are owned by the county, but we've given that responsibility to SREC and using $0.1 in user fees to make sure we're maintaining the towers, replacing the towers where necessary, doing periodic evaluations of them. Also in terms of the equipment on top of it, we've got service agreements in place. Our team has a lot of involvement with ensuring the radio system is operational. And at times we have to replace equipment in there. So all the costs of the maintenance, operations, and replacement of the radio system is what's been built in here based on the city of Spokane's use of the system. So long explanation, my apologies. In the budget, we have included sales tax projected increase of about 2%. That's very consistent with what the county is projecting for county budget. And since SREC is the countywide tax, or the 1/10 is a countywide tax, it makes sense for it to be based on the same projection. Assumption only, just built into here to kind of give us a baseline understanding of what it might look like. We built in a assumption that the equitable apportionment lands at 48%. We don't know what it's gonna be yet. I can tell you, the current, Cody referenced earlier, it's actually a little bit lower. The current run rate of the city is about 47% of countywide sales tax apportionment or sales tax origination for the emergency communications. And our population is about 41.8. Those are variable, they change to the extent that the city starts to see more purchasing power inside the city, that number could go up, but that's where it's at today. So this is an assumption only. It's not based on a belief that this will eventually be it, but it's kind of the middle of the road, if you will.
Really quick, Maggie.
Maggie, did you have something to say?
Yeah, thanks. Just a quick question on the explanation on radio, Scott, you were just going over. Is the 4.6 built in here for non-member agencies, the radio costs you're assuming will go to the city of Spokane, or is that covering something else?
That would be the city of Spokane, Maggie. That would reflect, I believe, what the amount is that SREC has provided the city under an interlocal agreement and the details behind it.
For radio services specifically.
Radio services, not including the purchase of the radio units for your mobiles themselves. This is the
Maintenance.
the large network infrastructure.
Yeah,
So, yeah, not the consumables.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so that's what we've done here. In the previous draft budget, you would have seen right now that SREC is projecting that revenues will exceed expenses by about 3 million this year in 25. And a lot of that is because of our expenses have been trending less, more so than revenues trending higher. In the previous document, you will have seen a $3 million application of those user fees. Of the revenues over expenditures to apply to next year to reduce user fees. What Lori and team did is they went back and removed that assumption, but reduced, with the assumption that this is only for the 20 member agencies, reduce our overall costs, whether it's personnel, supplies, services, capital, to reflect a go forward with only the 20 member agencies. That's resulted in that comparable 3 million to be reduced out of expenses, which then allows user fees to what you saw before to be substantially consistent, even though we're not using the fund balance for offsetting those. So it's right sizing the agency to reflect what the go forward looks like based on what we know today. All right. You'll see on this first page here, we had previously presumed that there would be up to a $20 million need to finance towards the upgrade and remodeling, the building, all of the tower, all of the requirements to provide the security that we need in this building. This now reflects that $3 million that is expected to come revenues over expenses to go towards the facility. We've also made an assumption here that we've been operating off of a fund balance that's about 3 months of operating expenditures, and that's kind of a best practice, right? But we also have had an ongoing unrestricted fund balance. We've also applied the unrestricted fund balance towards the building. So it's allowed us to get down to kind of a gap of only about 3 million.
And I would just add that we also made the assumption that while 3 months for the operating reserve is best practice, we could take that down to 2 months and apply 1 month to the building as well.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's something that we can reach for as we move forward, but ultimately bringing that back down to try to fill that gap.
And knowing that our operating expenses now would be less because the city of Spokane's out, that calculation would yield some more reduction in our ability to move that fund balance down. So the 3 million that you see in here is a financing need, hasn't been solved on. Again, we ran this through yesterday, so the team did their best to provide a budget here that is pretty directionally where we're at today, but we still need to do some more tweaks. That's why I said there's likely going to be some budget amendments that we have coming through in subsequent months as we learn more about this. So I mentioned the 48%, so you'll see that our emergency communications sales tax, our 911 excise tax are much lower projected next year than it was this year. If we go to the expense, the 2026 expenses, I will note that we will need to strike that debt service based on 20 years. That is no longer an assumption in here. The continuation of that, the next page, the debt service will also need to remove because that was presupposing the 20 million. So that will also be reduced out of there. So we can do that. I know we have to adopt the budget today by our bylaws. So there's a couple different paths we can take. We can recognize that needs to be a change and a budget amendment comes through next month for that. Or Jeff, I'm presuming we could make a motion to remove that from the budget today and adopt as amended. We've done that before too. So that's really the pleasure of the board here.
Yep. You want to do that while it's top of mind and see, does anybody want to make a motion to remove the debt service at this time?
I would recommend we do it that way, and then that there doesn't have to be a budget amendment, and it gives a direction back to the team just to remove that out, as reflected by the board.
Yeah, so move. Okay. Got a motion by Sheriff Knowles. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor of removing the debt service from the current draft budget?
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any nays?
Nay.
Nay.
2 nays.
Okay, the 6-year capital plan, and moving on to the next one, you'll see that, and this will be part of the evaluation we'll have to do. We've got about a $2.9 million makeup that we have to do for the building. And I'll say also, I don't want to miss this point, that our SREC team has been continuing to value engineer the capital needs for this. So we're not done. They're still looking through, and they've made some great strides to reduce some of the projected capital budget. And I expect that'll continue, and we'll be able to get briefed on how they're doing that. Lori was telling me a couple of areas that they've already identified as they're working through with our progressive design build team, opportunities to reduce further. So that 2.9 gap right now could be reduced. Don't want to make any commitments, but it's something that the team is continuing to evaluate as far as helping helping us continue to focus on fiscal stewardship and right sizing of all of our operations. So in the capital improvement plan, the microwave replacement is in there. Right now, I believe the previous draft showed it was 27 and 28. We're trying, that's kind of a moving target, just so we know truly end of life and then the affordability to replace it. So that could be, it's right now it's in 28 and 29. And that will require further evaluation from by the team to inform on when that replacement and how much that replacement would need to be. Critical piece of our backbone, necessary for us to ensure interoperability and connectivity throughout the emergency communication system. If you jump back to member agency charges, I believe that's, I don't know what page that's on, but this should also be reflective of very similar numbers to what you had previously seen. Keeping the 2026 projected member or user fees at about the same level as what you had seen previously.
Those numbers were presented to both LCAB and AVCAB. Those have not changed for the groups that saw those in the last week and a half.
Perfect. Anything else I missed, Lori, on the budget? So, apologies for the, some of the last minute changes, but I think they were birthed out of just a desire to make sure we provide baseline assumptions from what we know today, so that each member agency can look at this and say, okay, this is what it would look like if we were already separated, right? This is what it would look like for next year and informs on future years and again, looks at trying to be very thoughtful around impacts to our member agencies, trying to keep those as flat as we can. We all are in various degrees of budget challenges, and I think this represents a reflection of that by the SREC team as presented to the board today.
Thank you, Scott.
Clarification, you said that these numbers are paid to FCAT, so in difference from what was presented before at iChiefs.
Yeah. Yeah, so this was this week at AVCAB speaking this week.
All right, Tommy Williams.
Yes, sir. Hey, Scott, you said a few times this was a bunch of last minute changes. Has this gone through the finance committee to be vetted and evaluated?
They went through executive committee, and because of the timing that we had right now, the predominant impacts on all the member agencies are all the same. There's just some moving parts in between. So two of our members on the executive team are on the finance committee, so we felt pretty comfortable vetting it for the executive team.
Okay.
Maggie, go ahead.
Yeah, just I caught that you had shared that, Scott, and part of the reason that informed my vote earlier, I have concerns that this didn't go through finance before it was brought to the board, and that there have been changes from the last board meeting it was presented to this one.
Okay. Thank you, Maggie. All right. I will entertain if there's no further discussion. I will entertain a motion that we pass the budget as amended.
I'll make a motion to pass the budget as amended.
All right, Chief Soto,
Second.
second by Sheriff Knowles. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any abstentions? Any nays?
Nay.
Hey,
2 nays. Motion passes the budget as amended. All right. I entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll move. Second.
Second.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
take care.
Thank you.